In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a nice looking line plot in R using ggplot and Plotly. So the line plot is going to be of COVID data for the US, the daily cases, and it's going to be an interactive chart which shows how the number of cases change over time. So line plots are a great way to show the evolution of a trend of a time series, such as this one. So we're going to have the time series itself, and I'm also going to put a smoother on top of the line just so that we can see the trend a little bit more clearly. To get the data, I just went to the source called ourworldindata.org, coronavirus source data. So if you want to follow along, just go there and download the CSV file. So the libraries I'm going to be using for this are going to be tidyverse, Plotly, and Lubridate. There's an additional library that I'll mention below. So to load in the data, I just read in the data with read.csv, and it's a CSV file, and I'm filtering for the United States. So let's just run this section of the code just to see what it looks like originally. And we can see that we have this location field and we have the new cases. So these are the fields that we're interested in. I'm just going to go ahead and filter for the United States. And then one additional change that I'm going to make is that the date, when I load it in, it's loaded as a factor. And I want to convert this to date. So I'm going to use this function called year, month, date, which comes from the Lubridate package. And when you load in tidyverse, it might be within the tidyverse library itself, or you might just go ahead and load in the Lubridate library. I'm going to select after that the date column and the number of new cases, and I'm just going to filter out any missing data that might exist in that series. So once all of that pipeline is ready, I can just go ahead and run this chunk and get the data ready for plotting. As far as the plotting goes, I'm just going to move to the next chunk so that it's clean and presentable. I'm just going to take the COVID data and I'm going to pipe this into the ggplot function. And what the ggplot function does is it helps us to map the data to the graph, the line plot that we're going to be making. So I'm going to specify mapping here. And aesthetics, I'm going to specify that on the x-axis I want the date, and on the y-axis I want the number of new cases. So there we go. If I just go ahead and run this chunk, it's going to provide this empty canvas. So next up, let's put the data on there using geom_line, and that's going to basically help us create the line plot. So if I just run it like that, it creates this line which presents the information, but we could make it look a little bit nicer. So I'm going to increase the size of the line, and basically by size I mean the thickness of the line. So we specify the size, and I think a size of 1 might be pretty good. Let's try it out. Yeah, so it makes the line look a little bit thicker. Next thing, I prefer to strip away this background, this grayish background. I prefer that it's just a black and white type of chart. So for that, we can use a function called theme in black and white. So theme _ black white. There are some other themes as well that you can try. There are some interesting ones, but I prefer to use the black and white theme. I'm going to go ahead and run this chunk now. And it's starting to look pretty nice. Let's also put a title on there, and to put a title we can use this labs function, and in here I can specify title, and I'm just gonna say US daily COVID-19 cases. Also going to specify or improve the appearance of the X label and the Y label. So for X label we can write xlab and then date, and then on the Y label I'm going to write new cases. Let's go ahead and run this, and it's looking pretty nice now. One additional thing I'm going to do is here, instead of this scientific format, I would prefer to see the numbers in thousands. So there's another function for that, which is scale underscore y underscore continuous. And in here I can specify labels is equal to. I'm going to use a function called comma, and to get this function, you can either load in a library called scales, and if you don't have it, just go ahead and install that package. Or if you already have it, just it's basically scales. We can write it like this, and then colon, and we get access to comma, which is what I'm going to use. So once I run that chunk, now the graph is looking pretty nice. So we can see that the US had one day where it hit close to 300,000 cases. Generally, it's been trending around the 100,000 to 200,000 cases in this area. Let's also put a smooth line so that the trend becomes a little bit clearer. And to put a trend line, we can use this function called geom_smooth. There's a few different methods that we can use in geom_smooth. If I use just the linear model in here, it's going to create this trend line, and this doesn't describe the trend too well. So there's another function called LOS that helps us to develop a trend line which models this data a little bit more closely. We do have to specify a parameter called span, and we can just see how this works if I enter a value like 0.5. So with the value of 0.5, we can see that it's able to capture some of the nonlinear trends a little bit better. And LOS is basically a local regression, which basically works on subsets of data rather than the whole data set. So that's why it helps us to get this little bit smoother trend. The span, in my opinion, should be somewhere like 0.25. And once I do that, I think that makes the trend look a little bit closer to reality. Last thing is I'm just going to save this in a variable called g, and we can first of all just load g. It's the same graph. And if you want to convert this into an interactive chart, we can use the Plotly library and use the function called ggplotly. And I'm just going to go ahead and run this. And so now we have this nice looking plot. It's interactive, so we can see how things change over time. And I can actually make it look a little bit bigger. And that is it. So it's a pretty nice looking plot. Hope you like the video. Thank you very much.